Having covered all sorts of things from what our data is, how to collect it, how to analyze it, how to access it, what about primary and secondary and so on, and all these shorter things about validity and reflexivity and such, it is useful to try to bring a little bit all this stuff together. So what if you think about the last semester, I have this picture for you where I put on quite a few different paradigms, and I told you that the reason that I have this many is that more could not fit the slide. And you might remember that it was about how to figure out the right one for you, that you can that it has to be something that is working well enough with your own worldview, and beyond that you try to find something that is close enough, and you probably should not build your own, because then it takes a very difficult process, and especially very difficult viva. So what you need to remember from this is that the problem that you are solving does not determine your paradigm. It is the other way around. The paradigm that you have, regardless whether you are aware of it or not, will determine how you formulate the problem. And of course, when you are elaborating this in your dissertation, you will need to make considerations at ontological, epistemological, and possibly axiological level. You might remember that I mentioned that axiology is the study of values, and it incorporates mainly ethics and aesthetics. So basically it is about the study of values. Now you will need to live with it, that for your problem solving process, this is the paradigm. However, we have similar choices at every level of the onion. So we need to choose our research design, and we have covered, I think, 7 of those. There are a few others that I mention here, some of them mentioned here, for example, like Gestalt or thought experiment type approach. So it is all about what you want to do, but taking into consideration what is possible, and of course what is possible within that time that is available for your studies. And of course you might use opportunities as they raise during your studies. So for example, at this time it was very meaningfully done by several problem solvers that they incorporated some aspect of the COVID to emphasize something about their research that they were doing anyway. And of course, you have the same story about the methods, both for the data collection methods, which are at the top, as well as for the data analysis methods, which are around the face. And of course, the analysis methods are the more difficult choice because simply there are so many of them. Again, there could be much more, as in case of the paradigms, simply more would not fit the picture. I will not get into much more detail of this at the moment, because this is what we are talking about for the last 2 days anyway. So how this works, this whole stuff in reality? In reality, you require a little bit of magic. That is what I try to represent with this picture. So it is all really, really messy. The choices do not happen in a neat sequence. You change your mind about this, you change your mind about that, you switch to a different philosophical approach, to a different paradigm, then you need to rethink whether your methods are still working. All the choices that you make mutually affect each other. They all need to be in harmony, and if you are changing one, you might need to rethink all the other ones as well, and so on. The other thing is that we are human beings and we are not doing these things as robots. So basically you cannot help it when you start analyzing as soon as you start collecting the data. Why? Because you see the data and you are interested in this phenomenon that you are studying, and you immediately start thinking about what it means for your phenomenon. So even if you don't write it down, even if you don't do any of it formally, you are still engaging in some sort of data analysis. All of this is done in a somewhat subjective way, because we are subjective beings, so we cannot get away from our subjectivity, or what Polanyi prefers, the concept of personal, which is not only subjective, but because subjective can include that something just happens to you, but here you actually have intentionality, you do things at your own free will, and that's what the notion of personal emphasizes. Of course, we all have all sorts of prior knowledge and beliefs and all sorts of things in our minds and emotions and so on, and these will influence how we see things in the first place. And of course, we cannot get rid of using heuristics, even if they are considered untidy, because very often we are not even aware of using them. But if you, I don't know, studied a little bit about research methods, then you will know that if we did not use heuristics, we could not get ever anywhere, because they help us speed up the processes in the real world. And therefore, we need to reflect and be reflexive about the real process of research as it happened once it is there. And I hope that the bracketing notion that I introduced will help you with that as well.